Hello demons, it's me, Spooky, and welcome to my YouTube channel. I've been wanting to do a YouTube channel for a really long time now, and I'm really excited that I finally worked up the nerve to do it. So, welcome. If you're from TikTok, hello, it's me. It is Spooky Month. Spooktober, as I like to call it. I know that is already a term, but we're gonna use it for my Spooktober. So for the rest of the month, I'll be posting one spooky themed video a week until the end of the month. So this is the first in the series, also my first YouTube video on this channel. I'll be moving some from my other channels over to this channel as well. Yeah, so this week we're going to be talking about Mothman, the Mothman of Point Pleasant, West Virginia. So sit back, relax, grab some candy, if you can eat candy, and enjoy while we talk about the Mothman. Let's start at the beginning. It's 1967. We are in Point Pleasant, West Virginia. Two grave diggers, as they're digging a grave, as grave diggers are wont to do, spot a man-like figure flying in the trees over their heads. Days later, two teenaged couples from Point Pleasant, Roger and Linda Scarberry and Steve and Mary Millette. They're driving in this area known as the TNT area. This is what the locals have coined it. And it was formerly a World War II munitions factory. So they were working on a bunch of explosives for World War II, and it was eventually abandoned once the war ended. And they're driving through this area, the TNT area, just double date. You know how teenagers are in the 1960s. Just having a date, doing what they do, doing what teenagers do. When suddenly they turn around and see that there's something in the sky. And they look up and they see a large flying man with 10-foot wings. And they see this and they're like, crap, we should get out of here. So they start driving away, but this creature continues to follow them. And it follows them down the road, and one of them turns back and sees that this creature has glowing red eyes. It's specifically described as glowing red eyes. It's one of the famous features of this creature that we're talking about today. It continues to chase them down the road for a little bit, but eventually they lose it and they go to the police station and report it to the police. First two sightings create a whole extravaganza of other sightings, of culture references. There's a movie, there's various books. If you're on TikTok, people love, if you're on cosplay TikTok, people love to cosplay Mothman on there. So these first two sightings have created a widespread interest in this creature. The following few days, there were more sightings. A pair of volunteer fighters claimed to have seen something like a large bird with red eyes. Keep that in mind when we get into theories, that they claim to have seen a large bird. Unlike the other sightings that said that they saw a man. This creature that we've been discussing so far would become to be known as the Mothman. General consensus of the Mothman, the witnesses of the Mothman, was that it was a large, masculine-looking bipedal humanoid. Let me say that again. It was a large, masculine-looking bipedal humanoid with large wings and glowing red eyes. Its wingspan is described as being huge, imposing. Its height ranged from 6 feet tall to 8 feet tall. And that's not the end of our story. The last confirmed sighting of the Mothman was in December of 1967. specifically December 15th, 1967. The imposing figure of the Mothman was spotted over the Silver Bridge in Point Pleasant. Moments later, after the sighting, the bridge collapsed, leading to the deaths of 46 people. This gave rise to the idea that the sighting of the Mothman was a bad omen. And that was the last confirmed sighting. There have been various other sightings of the Mothman over the years. I think there was one, if I remember correctly, there was one as recent as 2012, but it was proved to actually be a bird carrying a snake in its talons. So let's get into the theories. Theory 1. Some believe that there actually was a Mothman. With the former munitions factory nearby, and one of the first sightings being near this factory, many people believe that it was actually born from this factory, either from a failed military experiment or even a nuclear leak that created some sort of strange bird-human hybrid, or simply mutated the local birds from the forest. Now, I know it definitely sounds like something you'd read out of a comic book, and I mean, that's partially where Mothman gets his name. Mothman very much resembles Batman in many ways, and I think the creation of the name Mothman probably comes from the idea that he sort of has this superhero or supervillain origin story. But there are definitely people who believe this theory. There are some on the internet who believe that Mothman was created from a failed experiment or a nuclear leak. My fault with it is, of course, that it sounds like a superhero or a supervillain origin story. But there's no real evidence that there was any nuclear testing going on in the area. There was definitely the creation of explosives, but they weren't necessarily nuclear. I'm not too familiar with other explosive materials. I don't know how much they could mutate the area. I know that some of the toxins seeped into the forest and caused some issues, but I don't think anything was mutated. Generally, when you think of mutation, you think of like nuclear mutation. I don't think there's really any other toxin that does what nuclear toxins do. The second theory is that the Mothman was actually a UFO, or Mothman was actually an alien. So what we were seeing wasn't like an actual flying ship, but instead an alien that had wings. A species that we're not familiar with. I mean, we're not really familiar with, for sure, with any sort of alien species, but the theory is it's not a gray or a white or alien. It's a new species of alien. And the third and final theory is that possibly the Mothman was misinterpreted. Possibly the most reasonable theory out of the three, though that is up to you to decide. According to Joe Nickel, locals actually spotted owls and not a Mothman. They, in fact, actually just spotted just a regular owl. I think with the second group of witnesses, the teenagers, I think, and this, if you watch BuzzFeed Unsolved, this was mentioned that they could have been smoking some of the dope, and therefore they're obviously, marijuana doesn't cause you to hallucinate necessarily, but it can distort things for you. It can make, in my experience, it can make things seem a little more dramatic than they are. So you're seeing what you're seeing, and what you're seeing is real. It's just might be a little more dramatic. The mention of the glowing red eyes is actually a secondary source. One of the witnesses from the teenagers, his daughter actually came forward and said that he saw glowing red eyes. I believe it was his daughter. It was one of the witnesses' daughters came forward and said that the glowing red eyes was a feature of the Mothman. So that's actually a secondary account. But that can easily be explained away by headlights reflecting off of an animal's eyes. I mean, if you took a photo of your pet with the flash on, or even just shone your camera, or sorry, even if you just shone your flashlight in their eyes, you would see the red eyes reflecting back at you. So that's easily explained away. So what most likely happened is the headlights of the car probably shone into this creature's eyes, and this creature was probably just an owl. And because they were possibly intoxicated, and it's nighttime, I assume it's nighttime. I probably shouldn't assume. They're probably distracted, and they see this giant thing fly at them. It's probably an owl flying right at them, and the headlights probably reflected off its eyes. So that's probably all they saw. The same goes for the gravediggers. If they're working at night, they probably have flashlights. They probably look up and see a giant owl flying over them. I mean, giant owls are quite large. They look quite small in photos and stuff, but their wingspan is huge. So that's the third theory, that it was simply an owl that the witnesses saw. But that's not to say that Mothman isn't still a cryptid favorite. The locals of Point Pleasant have certainly run with the Mothman legends. If you visit the town now, you can see the famous Mothman statue in the center of the town. There are also lots of local businesses and even a museum to visit, as seen on BuzzFeed Unsolved. This has opened the question of whether or not Mothman was just a hoax made by the town, and I don't believe this. Personally, I don't think a whole town of people would create a hoax. I don't think they'd be able to. I think we'd know about it for sure by now. But I think a lot of people definitely ran with it and took the opportunity, and I don't see anything wrong with that. Is it possible that the first few witnesses made up the story, and then people just saw something large in the sky and said, oh, it must be Mothman? That's possible, but I don't think the whole town is in on this joke, prank, I don't know. I don't think the whole town is. So in the end, I don't think it matters. The Mothman has created a tourist center for the town and has probably brought in a lot of money and attention for the locals. So in the end, I don't think there's any harm done. I think a lot of people love Mothman. It's unfortunate that the bridge came down, but I don't think that has anything to do with Mothman, despite the alleged sighting. It was probably just a bird that someone saw. So that's unfortunate, but the town has a whole tourism-based economy now because of Mothman. So I think in the end, it's a good thing. It's also unfortunate that we don't have a giant mutated bird flying around, but we don't have a Batman flying around, but we still love him. So that's it. That's it for my video. That's it for my info sesh on, wow, I'm a mom. That's it for my info session on Mothman. Come back next week where I will discuss another spooky story. Yeah, I'd love to hear your guys' theories in the comments. What you think Mothman is, how much you love Mothman, any YouTube videos you'd like to see from me in the future. Those suggestions are welcome as well. So thank you guys so much, and I will see you next week.